in Lebanon. It's becoming an overflow place for not just civilians who are fleeing Tripoli, but we just saw an entire unit of Austrian Special Force troops heading out onto the runway to get on a plane to try to land in Tripoli and get their citizens out. It seems like the smallest European Union country, this tiny island of Malta, has sort of become the central point for all European Union countries to get their citizens out. So the airport is turning into a bit of a military base, if you like, because we're seeing troops from all over Europe come here trying to get their citizens out. And as the situation develops with this ship and the Air Force, it's also becoming a place, perhaps, where we'll see more and more Libyan officials, more and more Libyan military officers coming here to defect because it's just geographically close.
So just to recap on the breaking news, there is a Libyan naval vessel off the coast of Malta.
That's right. It's stalled in the water. We're being told that they are monitoring it via radar. They're watching it from the air. They don't know where it's going to come, whether it's going to come to the port here or whether it will turn around.
There's been no contact with anybody on the boat?
I'm sorry?
Has there been any contact with anybody on the boat?
Not that we know of. The Italian Navy is just telling us at this point they're watching it from the air, and that their concern is, of course, not only the security of the ship. If the ship is in fact defecting, there's an immediate concern that that ship, depending on the situation inside Libya, could be attacked by Libyan Air Force. Now, we don't know that that's going to happen, but they're watching it from the air. They're obviously very concerned about it. If it is defecting, certainly Malta would be the obvious place for it to come. That's where these fighter planes came. I can also tell you, we were standing outside the embassy, the Libyan embassy here in Malta. There were protesters chanting. They were asking for the pilots who came here yesterday, who defected, to be released, to join the protesters. And shortly after they asked for the pilots to be released by the Maltese government, some members of the Libyan embassy walked out of the embassy, defected, right broad daylight, middle of the day, and started taking part in the protest. So we're seeing sort of the Libyan government dissolving right in front of our eyes, but we're seeing it here in Malta, 200 kilometers to the north of Libya.
Interesting stuff, and I know you'll keep an eye on developments there for us, Cal. Thanks very much indeed for that. Cal Perry in Malta there. OK, so let's get some more reaction to the events in Libya. Saad Jabbar was the Deputy Director of the Centre for North African Studies at Cambridge University in the UK and an Associate at the Royal Institute for International Affairs, known as Chatham House. He's live for us in London now. Good to have you with us. We've seen some high-level diplomatic resignations. We've seen fighter jets defecting to Malta. It now seems as though perhaps a naval ship has defected to Malta. Gaddafi is known as a survivor, but given these protests, can he survive this?
Well, he was known as a survivor in the olden days. Now, since what happened in Tunisia, a model has emerged. That model challenging the existing regimes from Tunisia to Egypt and surely for other Arab countries consists of the following political prescription. All components of the society rise up against the existing regime. That happened in Tunisia, it happened in Egypt, and it is happening now in Libya. Gaddafi before could quell easily any grouping, any faction, any sort of mutiny. That is the past. I think we are living now in really people's power, where all sections of the society challenge the regime and try to bring it down, and the people's power is with us, and it's going to stay with us for many years to come.
Well, there has been an extremely brutal crackdown on the protesters. There is a growing clamour for the international community to do something about the situation in Libya. We know the United Nations Security Council is due to meet. What can the international community do?
I think there are two types of deterrence. One is to provide a safety zone or no-fly area like what happened in Kurdistan during Saddam, and to ban any military vehicles or military personnel entering the eastern region where it's liberated or it's free, and also to issue a warning or an ultimatum to Gaddafi and his family and the clan not to engage in any further crackdown or brutal or killing en masse of their own people, because that will entail the Security Council to issue an order under Chapter 7, a binding resolution for the International Criminal Court to start to investigate, like what happened in Omar Bashir's, President of Sudan's case, and even worse than that. And thirdly, not to allow the Somalization of the country, whereby the well-armed members of the clan of Gaddafi might engage in a die-hard operation to create chaos and so on. So I would call also for some sort of incentive to Gaddafi to give up by granting him safe passage and an immunity for him and his family and those and his followers in order to avoid the Somalization.
If he does give up, who's waiting in the wings? Who would form the next government?
I think we shall never fear what will happen thereafter. That tactic was used by many countries of the third world before, in Latin America, in Africa, and you always have emerging forces which are responsible, which are united, and united by what happened to them for the last 41 years, united for the repression they have lived, and united for the desire to be part of the universal order, the order of having good and accountable government and good governance, and that's what the Arab nations now deserve, rather than only revolutionary talk, whereas then the power ends up within the hands of the few in order to control the whole population. Well,
with that comment in mind, do you think the Arab League should do more? Because nobody seems to be expecting very much at all from the Arab League emergency session.
Since I said Arabs and the youth now are part of the universal values of good governance and accountable governments, I think that should come from the international community, the Security Council under Chapter 7, and the European Union. They push, as I've said, Gaddafi is a military man. It's better to give him an exit in order to save lives and to go back to normality as soon as possible and establish a modern state in Libya, which is a state for all the Libyans who have fought for their freedom, and they deserve that freedom, and that freedom will entail them to have good government, which is from the people and by the people.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts there. Saad Jabbar speaking to us from London. Well, as we've been saying, the United Nations Security Council is holding its session behind closed doors on Libya. Earlier, the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon made his feelings about the situation clear.
I have seen very disturbing and shocking scenes where Libyan authorities have been firing at demonstrators from the warplanes and helicopters. This is unacceptable. This must stop immediately. This is a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
Let's go live to the United Nations in New York and our reporter Scott Heidler. Scott, we're hearing reports that the entire Libyan delegation to the United Nations has quit. What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, right now, the very, very latest is that this morning session of the Security Council is now over, but it was primarily procedural. It ended in the last 10, 15 minutes. And what we've been told by members of the Security Council, representatives of members of the Security Council, is that they held this meeting to figure out how they're going to use the Security Council and the procedure for an afternoon meeting, and that's where the real discussion of Libya is going to take place. That's 3 o'clock local this afternoon.